This Essex town is in mourning, still in shock at the sudden and senseless loss of Sir David Amess. Political leaders, usually on different sides, today united to pay tribute to a much-loved local MP, killed just doing his job. The Home Secretary, whose own constituency is nearby, called him a dear friend whose loss she was struggling to come to terms with. She also set out what action she was taking to protect others in the wake of his death.
There are measures underway right now. I've convened meetings yesterday. I've been with the Speaker of the House and with the police and our security services to make sure that all measures are being put in place for the security of MPs so that they can carry on with their duties.
A terrorist incident with possible links to Islamic extremism is how the police have described the attack. A 25-year-old man is in custody after being arrested at the scene. We don't know yet what lies behind this, but we do know that it has shaken this area to its core. Expressing their grief today, representatives from the Muslim community.
He was our very friend, our guardian, and he used to attend our programs, our celebrations. So we greatly miss him, and he will be always missed.
We all felt if we have any problem above our color, creed or race, he is there for you. That is so important. You hardly find people, they don't make them anymore.
This is Sir David Amess's constituency office, just down the road from where he held his surgeries and where he was tragically killed. It's very visible, it's right in the heart of the community, and even today it's still open to the public as it was during his time as an MP. But the question for all MPs now is, can this level of accessibility continue, or will things have to change in the wake of this terrible tragedy? The abuse received by MPs was something Sir David had himself experienced, revealed in this interview just a few months ago in his typically light-hearted way.
And of course, all the abuse that you get online now is pretty grim. I never engage with anyone who happens to be critical of me.
His friend and neighbouring MP James Duddridge was among those paying their respects. Some MPs have suspended their surgeries. He believes they must continue.
And we must just carry on. You know, this idea that we're going to have to stop doing surgeries is incorrect. You know, we need to be out and about in the community. Yes, we need to take a few precautions, but there are systems in place to provide that. They need to be dusted off, but we will carry on. That's what David would have wanted.
This area is at the centre of a very public crime, but each person here is dealing with a very personal loss, and foremost on their minds are Sir David's family.
There's very little I can actually say that will comfort them, but all I can actually say is my prayers, my thoughts are with you. I am so sorry this has happened, and I'm so sorry it's happened to him, a man who was obviously warmly regarded. And well, may God's grace be with him and his wisdom guide him in the next few days, because I know they will need it.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, there's been an outpouring of grief here today as people continue to process what has happened. More widely, there's still this question of how to keep MPs safe as they go about doing their jobs. And we've seen different attitudes really emerging on that today. Some MPs very defiantly going out and about in their constituencies, holding surgeries, many of them even publicising where they are. Other MPs have been saying that we need to take a moment of reflection and have urged caution. Tobias Elwood, a Conservative MP, has said today that until the Home Secretary's review of MP security is complete, he wants to see a pause in face-to-face meetings. We do expect more details on that review to come soon. We haven't heard much more from the police today, but what we can say is that this evening a 25-year-old man is still in custody.
Liz, thanks very much. Well, I'm joined now from the Commons by the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoare. Sir Lindsay, thanks very much for joining us this evening. It is a very dark time, personally, for Sir David's family and friends, but for the wider political world too, isn't it?
It is indeed. It was a very dark day yesterday, and it's a very dark weekend ahead. And what I would say is, I just want to put on record all our present thoughts with David's family, all his friends. He was a friend to us all. He was one of those MPs that everybody loved. He was a smiling, nice guy. If you politically had a difference, it wasn't a fallout. The fact is, we've lost one of our senior members of this House. As I say, we're all in deep, deep shock.
But his death, his killing, raises once again those huge questions about the safety of MPs.
And I've got to say, we always take safety and security is a priority of mine for not only of MPs, but of the House staff and MP staff and families of MPs. It is the centre of what we try to do here. We work very closely, we brought in security measures that didn't exist not that long ago, but we always reviewing, we will always consider and look at what we can do, because in the end, we have to ensure that democracy survives. These people don't like our values. They don't uphold democracy. They want to stop us carrying out our duties. They cannot win and must not win, but we will always try and ensure that we do the right thing to protect MPs.
On exactly that point, the Home Secretary sort of seems to take your view. She said very publicly, we will not be cowed. And in many ways, it's a sort of inevitable show of defiance. But it would be fair this evening if MPs were afraid, if their families were telling them to stand down.
And that's the worry. We've got to protect democracy. We've got to protect the future of democracy. We want people to come forward to be the future politicians. We've got to ensure that fear isn't there. And it is about protection. It's about looking after MPs, working with them, looking after the families, looking after the staff that work with MPs. It's utmost, and that's part of what we've got to deliver. And what we've got to do is review what happens. We know tragically David has been stabbed, somebody's arrested, but the reality is we've got to get this right. And we will put measures in place if that's what is required. We'll extend measures. We'll always look to improve measures all the time. But what we cannot do is say today what is needed without knowing what the evidence was, what happened, what the circumstance, how can we prevent the future? And you're absolutely right. But in the end, we've also got to make sure there is a link between MPs and their electorate, because that's part of what I believe in.
But in the terrible death of Joe Cox and now Sir David, can you protect democracy as we see it operating and protect MPs? Is it possible to protect both?
We've got to try and do both, absolutely. If we haven't got democracy, what have we got? So that's the priority. And of course, we've got to protect MPs. We've got to learn and look at what happened. And tragically, Joe Cox was robbed from us. Stephen Timms was attacked in the surgery as well. And what I would say is, it's much easier to protect a building like the House of Commons when with 650 MPs operating outside London. We have to work with the local police force, which we are doing. We're connecting with the force. That link between the police and MPs takes place all the time. It's a review of measures. I think the other thing that we've got to remind MPs is we have got these measures. Please use them.
But you touch on a very, very key point here. Sir David was killed perhaps during one of the most exposing parts of political life, the constituency surgery, often held in a library or a church. Practically, how do you possibly do what you are saying is possible, which is to keep MPs making that direct contact with constituents safe in those very vulnerable areas? Practically, how do you do that?
What we always do, and we always say, I don't want to get into the detail, is what we do security-wise, and you wouldn't expect me to. In fact, you wouldn't dream of pushing me in that way to reveal what we do. What I can say is that we always say to MPs, please contact your police to let them know where you're doing a surgery and have that checked as a security measure. So wherever you have it, and last night I held my surgery, I went ahead with it. I believe it was the right thing to do. The people had surely expected to meet their MP. I was there for them. What I do take seriously is that I'm in the town hall. I'm in a safer building. I can say that because the town hall has got entrances, it's got waiting rooms. The thing is, we've got to not prejudge what happened here. What I would say is we've got some very good measures, and I would suggest that not all MPs are following the measures that we advise.
briefly, Sir Lindsay, you will know that Harriet Harman, the veteran Labour MP, Mother of the House, says there must be a Speakers' Conference now. Now, it was rejected after the murder of Jo Cox 5 years ago. Will you be pressing the Prime Minister to agree this time?
Well, as you say, it's a Speakers' Conference, so I think that's probably down to me. And what I would suggest is that, gently suggest, I take seriously requests, but what we need to do is establish the facts. There's no point having a Speakers' Conference without knowing what actually happened. What can we do about it? Security is about also making sure that we have the right measures. By having a conference is great to debate it, but what I want is real security measures, looking after MPs, making sure they're safe, along with the families and the staff of MPs who are also on the front line. It's about making sure they're safe as well. And what I would say is, let's get the results of what's gone on, let's find out the details, and then we can make informed decisions. And we will always try to do the right thing in security measures and terms.
Sir Lindsay Hoyle, thank you so much for talking to us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, earlier I spoke to Labour's Harriet Harman, known as the Mother of the House, for being the longest-serving woman MP in the Commons. She began by paying tribute to Sir David Amess.
David Amess was the most incredibly affable and friendly person. And I remember when we both came into the House of Commons around the same time in the early 1980s, and I was certainly determined never to be friendly with any Tory MP, but it was impossible to sustain that position with David Amess because he was just so friendly and affable and so prepared to work with you on things that mattered. And he's been like that with every subsequent generation of MPs. All the different generations on both sides of the House regard him with absolute affection and warmth.
And there is a really sad, terrible irony that Sir David, an MP who was absolutely passionate about his constituency, about being available to his constituents, that he should have been killed in this way and sparked this debate once again about whether that accessibility is safe anymore.
Well, I think MPs are reeling from the loss of Sir David Amess, but also the feeling that this has been an attack on democracy and a real concern that we have to make sure that we protect that relationship with our constituents, with our voters, engagement with the local community, but actually make sure we do so in a safe way. We've had 2 MPs killed in the last 5 years. We can't simply say, well, that's the price of democracy. It can't be an occupational hazard of being an MP that you can face death when just going about your duties. So I do think we have an obligation to look at how we ensure that whilst we're able to carry on our work, we can do so in a safe as possible way.
That is a very, very difficult balance to strike, though, isn't it? And your colleague, Tobias Ellwood, has said that face-to-face contact between MPs and constituents, in the way that Sir David was meeting his constituents yesterday, he says that must end now, at least in this moment.
Well, I think that must be part of the discussion, because I think that there are ways, whilst maintaining face-to-face contact, we can make the situation safer. You've heard all the comments that have come in the wake of this tragic second killing of an MP, the killing of David Amess. And instead of just having a debate publicly, which we need to have, we need MPs to be brought together in a process which allows us to discuss how we think we can best do our job. And that's why I'm suggesting that we have what's called a Speakers' Conference, which is quite a rare process. It only happens about once every 10 years, where the Speaker brings together all parties in the House of Commons and the government, and they can bring in the security services and the police and discuss how we can do our job but safely, and also how we can, whilst at the same time promoting our own political parties and our own political ideas, also promote democracy, because there's a responsibility on us to make sure that we set a good atmosphere where, yes, there are clear dividing lines, but there's not toxicity and enmity.
Isn't there a danger that this Speakers' Conference becomes a very, very long process, another debate, the sort of debate we saw after the tragic killing of Jo Cox, and that nothing changes?
Well, no, I think it will change things. And it is the responsibility of the House of Commons. It's not the responsibility of the police to set the parameters between an MP and their constituents, nor, frankly, is it the responsibility of the government, although we need them to play their part. It's for MPs in the House of Commons to work out how we can do this, and it can certainly deliberate and work quickly. After Jo Cox was killed, there was much greater security afforded to MPs in our own homes, and also there was an upgrade of security in Parliament, in the House of Commons. But what was not addressed was the issue of how we engage with our constituents in a way which is unique amongst European members of Parliament and other parliaments around the world.
Would you say that the truth is there are many MPs who are actually afraid as they go about their daily business?
There are many MPs who are concerned about whether or not the responsible thing is now to think about safety. There are many MPs' families saying, why don't you stand down at the next election? Is it really safe to carry on doing this? What we all want to do is we want to do the best job we can as MPs for our constituents, but we also have to make sure that we're safe.
And as of right now, do you agree with the MP Tobias Ellwood that for now at least, face-to-face contact, constituency surgery should be paused?
At the moment, it's down to each individual MP to decide what they do. I think we need that collective discussion. But MPs are individually elected and have to make their own decisions about their advice surgeries. But I think it would be helpful to all MPs to promptly have the discussion and also think about what support can be brought in to make sure that we're all safe.
And just briefly, do you take any particular precautions yourself?
I used to have open surgeries, which used to be on a rotation basis in different attendance halls, and I used to see the first 60 people that turned up without appointment. And after Jo Cox was killed, I just felt that that was not a safe thing to do anymore. And also there was an incident in my advice surgery when the police had to be called, and I began to see constituents just by appointment. I felt a responsibility not only for my own safety, but also for my staff's safety.
Harriet Harman, thank you very much for talking to us today.